Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're exploring, well, a critical part of the global economy that you might not think about every day, the green sand casting market.
Yeah, it's one of those foundational industries, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely essential for so many things. Automotive, heavy machinery.
Exactly. It's quietly fundamental. Okay, let's unpack this.
And what's great is we have this comprehensive green sand casting market report for 2025 from Cognitive Market Research to guide us.
So real data.
Real data. And it's fascinating because it's not just a single snapshot. We're looking at performance back in 2021, where we are now, basically, in 2025, and then projections all the way out to 2033.
Okay.
And it includes, compound annual growth rates, KGRs for like every region and country.
Yeah.
It gives a really clear picture of the trends.
Right. So for you listening, this means you're getting the really important nuggets of knowledge from the detailed analysis. It'll help you quickly grasp the global growth, but also those sometimes surprising regional shifts.
Yeah, the regional differences are key.
We're talking specific sales revenues, growth rates,
Yeah.
The numbers that really paint the picture. And just quickly, for anyone less familiar, green sand casting. It's a classic metal casting method.
Very traditional, but still incredibly relevant. You pour molten metal into these molds made of compressed, moist sand, the green sand. Super versatile.
And that term, CAGR, compound annual growth rate.
Right. Essentially just smooths out the growth over time. So instead of seeing peaks and valleys year by year, you get the average annual growth rate. Shows the consistent trend.
Perfect. So with that foundation laid, let's start with the big picture. What's the global sales revenue story for green sand casting?
Globally, the market's quite robust. It was valued at $22,873.9 million back in 2021.
Okay, nearly $23 billion.
Exactly. But 2025, so roughly now, it's estimated at $27,457.6 million.
So decent growth already.
Definitely. And looking forward to 2033, the projection hits $39,564.6 million.
Wow, okay. That's a big jump towards $40 billion.
It is, and that's driven by a pretty steady global CAGR of 4.672%. So consistent expansion worldwide. That's significant, almost doubling over that, 12-year period? Interesting. So how does that global trend break down when we look region by region? Let's kick off with North America. What's the scene like there?
North America, well, it holds a pretty substantial share of the market. In 2021, the regional sales were $6,564.81 million.
$6.5 billion, roughly.
Growing to $7,847.38 million in 2025. And the projection for 2033 is $10,797.2 million.
Okay, crossing the $10 billion mark.
Right. The regional CAGR there is 4.069%. So steady growth, but actually a little bit below that global average we just mentioned.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, I find, looking at the individual countries within North America. Because the U.S. is obviously the giant, right?
Absolutely.
Over $5 billion in 2021, heading towards, over $8 billion by 2033. But its growth, the CAGR, is a bit slower at 3.853%.
That's right, a mature market.
But then you look at Canada and Mexico. Canada started smaller, around $735 million in 2021, but it's projected to hit $1.3 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR over 5%. 5.017%.
Yeah, noticeably higher growth there.
And Mexico, too, showing strong growth, around $800 million up to nearly $1.4 billion with a 4.486% CAGR. So faster growth in the smaller North American economies. What does that suggest to you?
Well, it suggests, while the U.S. market is huge and stable, maybe there's more dynamic industrial investment or perhaps shifts in manufacturing focus happening in Canada and Mexico. They're showing higher percentage growth, even if the absolute numbers are smaller than the U.S.
Yeah.
Different drivers at play, perhaps.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting gears then. Let's move across the Atlantic to Europe. The report, I think, mentioned relatively slower expansion there overall.
That's generally true for the region as a whole, yeah. Europe's figures were $4,300.3 million in 2021.
Okay.
And that's projected to increase to $7,117.67 million by 2033. The overall regional CAGR is 4.181%. So similar to North America, slightly below the global average.
And the major economies, UK, Germany.
They reflect that slower trend. The UK CAGR is around 3.4%. Germany's similar at 3.426%. Russia also in that ballpark, about 3.58%. It points towards, more mature industrial bases there.
But hang on, that's not the whole story for Europe, is it? Because some countries are really bucking that trend.
Exactly, you've got exceptions. France, for instance, shows a much stronger growth. It went from about $468 million in 2021, projected up to nearly $870 million by 2033. That's a 5.517% CAGR.
Wow, significantly higher.
And Italy, too, pretty healthy growth at 4.734% CAGR. But what's really remarkable is the rest of Europe category.
Ah, yeah.
That group shows the highest growth in the region, 5.642% CAGR. It suggests there's a lot of dynamic activity happening in maybe smaller or Eastern European economies, perhaps.
That's fascinating. So a real contrast within the continent. You've got the slower big players, then France and Italy doing well, and this rest of Europe growing fastest, while places like Sweden and Denmark are really lagging, under 1.7% growth.
It really highlights that you can't just look at the regional average. The national pictures can be very different, driven by specific industries or investments.
Definitely. Okay, let's move to Asia Pacific now. Always a major player in manufacturing and global markets. What's the picture there? Any surprises?
Well, no surprise that it's a huge growth engine for this market. Asia Pacific started at 9,103.82 million in 2021.
Already the largest region back then.
By far. And it's projected to increase massively, reaching $16,344.1 million by 2033.
Wow, nearly doubling.
Almost. Supported by a really strong regional CGR of 5.121%, significantly above the global average.
And I bet there are some real powerhouses driving that within the region.
Absolutely. This region has some standouts. India, for example, is one of the strongest performers globally. It's projected to grow from roughly $1.46 billion in 2021 to over $2.9 billion by 2033.
Okay.
That's a CAGR of 6.085%. Really remarkable.
That is strong. Anyone else really pushing the envelope?
Singapore. It's among the fastest globally, actually. A stunning 6.671% CAGR. Smaller market overall, starting around at $300 million, but projected to more than double.
Incredible growth rate.
And Southeast Asia as a whole block is also showing impressive growth, 6.488% CAGR. Then you have the giants, China and Japan. While their percentage growth isn't quite as stratospheric given their massive base, they're still showing robust expansion around 4.75% CAGR.
So it's rapid growth across the board, but particularly explosive in India, Singapore, and Southeast Asia. What's fueling that, do you think? Industrialization?
I think that's a huge part of it. Rapid industrialization, massive infrastructure projects. It just creates this almost insatiable demand for basic manufactured goods. And casting is fundamental there. It really signals that continued shift of manufacturing weight towards these Asian economies.
Makes total sense. Okay, from the scale of Asia Pacific, let's zoom into South America, maybe a smaller slice of the pie overall, but the outline suggested it's a key growth driver.
Yeah, absolutely punching above its weight in terms of growth rate. South America started at $1,555.43 million in 2021.
Okay, about $1.5 billion.
Right. And it's projected to rise to $2,971.3 million by 2033. That gives it a regionally CGR of 5.748%.
Whoa, okay. That's significantly higher than the global average, even higher than Asia Pacific's overall rate.
It is. It's one of the fastest growing regions.
And who's leading the charge there? Brazil's the biggest economy.
Brazil's the largest contributor, yeah. And it has a healthy CAGR of 5.349%. But what really jumps out are Argentina and Colombia.
Oh, yeah.
Both are showing growth over 6.4%. Argentina at 6.477%, and Colombia right there with it at 6.473%.
That's really strong.
Very strong. And even the rest of South America category is growing fast, over 6% CAGR. So it's quite widespread across the continent.
Interesting. Suggests maybe broad-based industrial activity picking up mining, agriculture-related manufacturing, perhaps.
Could be. Sectors that use a lot of cast parts definitely seem to be thriving and driving that demand across South America.
Okay, let's contrast that now with the Middle East. The report highlighted this region as having comparatively slower expansion. What did the numbers say?
Yeah, the Middle East shows more modest growth, is about $869 million in 2021.
Okay.
Projected to reach $1,222.55 million by 2033. That reflects a much slower regional CAGR of just 2.41%.
Right, noticeably lower than other regions.
And key countries there, like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, they show even more subdued growth. Saudi Arabia's CAGR is just over 2%. Turkey's even lower at around 1.85%. So definitely a more mature, slower growth market picture there.
But is there any part of the Middle East showing a bit more life?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Even within that slower picture, the UAE stands out a bit. Its growth rate is higher at 3.545% CGR. Still not super high compared to, say, South America, but significantly better than its neighbors.
Maybe tied to their economic diversification efforts, moving beyond just oil and gas.
That seems likely, yeah.
Yeah.
Investments in other types of manufacturing or infrastructure could be driving that slight edge for the UAE.
All right, so that leaves one major region, Africa. And the report flagged this one as, maybe surprisingly to some, one of the fastest growing regions for green sandcasting. What's the data show?
The figures for Africa are, frankly, really impressive. The region started from a smaller base, $480 million-ish in 2021.
Okay, the smallest starting point.
Yes, but it's projected to grow significantly to 1,111.77 million by 2033. And that growth is driven by a very, very strong regional CAGR of 7.811%.
Wow, 7.8%. That's the highest regional CAGR we've seen by quite a margin.
It is, yeah. Top performing region in terms of growth rate.
And within Africa, are there specific countries leading that, or is it broad?
Well, countries like Nigeria and South Africa show very solid growth, both around 7.4% CAGR, so strong performance there.
Okay.
But what's perhaps even more striking is the rest of Africa category. That collective group has the highest CAGR of all, not just in Africa, but seemingly globally in these figures, 8.191%.
Over 8%. That's incredible. What does that signal?
It signals, I think, foundational industrialization kicking off across a wider range of African nations. Starting from a low base, yes, but the percentage growth suggests significant new investment in basic manufacturing, infrastructure, resource extraction, areas where casting is essential.
So really an emerging frontier for this kind of industrial activity.
Absolutely. It's a clear pointer towards where future industrial development momentum might be building globally.
That is truly impressive and definitely something for you, the listener, to keep in mind when thinking about global economic shifts in emerging markets. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What does this deep dive into the green sand casting market really tell us? The picture seems clear. Steady upward growth overall.
Definitely a robust upward trajectory globally.
But with these incredibly varied and frankly surprising regional dynamics underneath.
Exactly. So to summarize, the global market definitely expanding significantly. But that expansion is really being powered disproportionately by Asia-Pacific, South America, and especially Africa.
Right.
Countries like India, Singapore, Argentina, Colombia, and that whole rest of Africa category are showing really rapid growth. That's where the new industrial demand seems to be concentrating.
Meanwhile, Europe and the Middle East are growing, but more slowly, more mature markets.
Precisely. But the overall global trend is undeniably positive. It points to a pretty resilient fundamental industry.
So hopefully you've just gotten a shortcut to being well-informed about a market that maybe you didn't realize was quite this dynamic. We've given you the key numbers, the core insights.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how looking closely at a specific, maybe niche industry like green sand casting can actually tell us so much about these broader trends in global economic development and these major regional shifts.
It really does paint a picture.
And it leaves us with a question, I think, a provocative thought maybe for you to consider. Seeing this consistent global growth, and especially that standout performance in regions like Africa, what are the underlying maybe technological or industrial developments that are fueling this demand? Why green sand casting specifically, and how might these trends reshape the wider manufacturing landscape in the next decade or so?
Yeah. What's really driving it at the core, and what are the ripple effects? Something for you to definitely mull over as you connect these dots we've laid out today. Until next time, keep digging for those insights.